the Area 55 can make as many poppets as they need, but it's the waste that they create that limits them to how many they can make. And that's what our building's for. This building's been in the works for about 12 years. We've been here for two glorious years. We've had a lot of fun up here. We're almost done. We're close. We're probably 90 to 95% done with this project now. And we're starting to turn it over to Los Alamos so they can start doing their commissioning and hopefully get that building within the next year or so to where they can actually bring the liquid waste into it.
Wait, Los Alamos, the county or?
No, the labs.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Solano, we're turning it over to Lano. And so they're starting to come into the building and run some of their processes. They'll run all the processes with water for about a year to make sure everything does what it's supposed to do. And then they'll go into what they call surrogate testing, which is the same viscosity and mixture of what's gonna be coming in from Area 55. And then after they're done with the surrogate testing, then they'll go into the true liquid waste, radioactive liquid waste. And the whole building was built around this one machine. I call it the magic machine, because it's supposed to take and evaporate that liquid to such a small molecule that anything that's an undissolved solid in the waste stream and the water stream drops out. All your chemicals, just like your swimming pool. You throw chlorine in your swimming pool, everything's great, kills all the bugs, kids get to go swimming. Kids pee in the pool, well, it depletes the chlorine. But the chlorine is still in that water, it's just depleted chlorine. And that's called an undissolved solid. And what our magic machine does is it vaporizes that water to such a small molecule that the only thing that continues out of the magic machine is a pure liquid. Every undissolved solid falls out of that waste stream, goes back around through some pumps and into a 55-gallon drum that they put that liquid in, some hardener, they shake it up, and then they send it down to WIP. That's how they get rid of the bad stuff that comes from Area 55. And then the liquid that continues on, it goes into the building next door to us, which is low-level radioactive waste. They treat it to where you can almost get it into sanitary sewer. Right now, they truck it off the hill, and it actually milk trucks as containers. So, but yeah, that's what they do with it. But it's been good here. In all the years I've worked construction, I've never been on such a difficult project in my entire life. The bureaucracy that you got to put up with Lano and Triad and the engineers, it was just painstaking. The first experience I got is when we turned in a submittal. I'll give you an example of a very simple submittal we turned in. It was for a split unit, refrigeration split unit. And it was a Mitsubishi split unit. It's got a compressor on the roof, evaporator in the little room. And America installs probably 10,000 of those a day. It's general commercial items right off the shelf. Well, they had a guy, every submittal we turn in goes to 22 different SMEs. An SME is a subject matter expert.
I guess you're not the expert.
Uh-huh. And this guy went down through 3 or 4 different levels of ASME and code and stuff, and he found an article that said that copper tubing in that compressor up there was 0.006 too thin. And he rejected our submittal. But we install 10,000 of those a day in America. And this product, this split unit, is on the commercial side of the building. You have your radioactive side, we have our commercial side, which is our compressors, our vacuum pumps, our split units, all cooling and heating. That's all commercial stuff, but they rent it through the radioactive nuclear AG1, EQA1 programs. And we almost had to get to the point where we're gonna have to have the manufacturer build us a one-off coil for that compressor because of that guy. Yes.
Do the coils dissolve within the radioactive, whatever goes through it?
No, this was just for heating and cooling. It's all it was. It had nothing to do with, it will never, in that portion of the building, it will never see anything that's radioactive. Whether it's in the air or liquid, it will never see it. But he was trying to prove his word and said, look what I found, 0.006 too thin. So
on that point, So not even getting into the importance of heating or cooling on a space and the impact it have on the overall system. Just out of curiosity, so this is an industrial standard for the thickness of this copper pipe. It's used installed 10,000 times a day in the United States. And so there was something else, some fudge factor or something built into it, just based on acidity or alkalinity of the water or fluid being passed through it, and you
Just
rejected it. Okay.
Freon is all it is.
Oh,
And-
it's Freon.
Yeah.
Oh.
And the refrigeration.
Okay.
And on our part, we have a project manager named Paul Stevenson who's worth his weight in gold. And because all that commercial stuff that we purchase, trying to keep costs down, they say, let's purchase it through COTS. Certified off the shelf, commercial off the shelf, COTS items, which shouldn't go into the scrutiny of 22 SMEs looking at a COTS item. And it kicked our butt for about 11 months trying to get approved submittals for this project. But thanks to Paul, common sense did prevail. Most of the times, Atlanta, common sense does not prevail, but with Paul Stevens as our project manager, he's the actual Triad employee, he done great. He's the only reason that this project is finishing up now. If it wouldn't have been for him, we'd still be fighting over submittals from a year ago. But he used a lot of common sense and he's done great. They're gonna get a building. We're gonna turn over a building that functions, and we'll give them everything that they need to do inside that building.
So all we have to do is get rid of Paul, or
No, keep Paul.
sabotage your plan, so that we can keep Louise up here
Oh,
in our
exactly.
club for another period of time.
That's true. She
Okay.
enjoys it up here.
Okay.
It's, living up here's been great. It's like Pleasantville up here. It's been really great. It's low key, it's slowed down. We lived in Albuquerque our whole lives. And to come up here and spend 2 years has been great. It's been great up here. Everybody cares about the community. Everybody shares, everybody cares about the kids. All this stuff's great. But before I go, I got one more story about a digester.
Oh,
A digester. It's not like yours. I put in a lift station at Greg's house. But got a call, Mr. Henderson, guy that owns the company I work for. He called and says, hey, we got a project that's been on the news before. He says, I want you to run this project and you better not ever put us on the news. Because the original contractor that installed the digester didn't do a very good job and it never digested. So at the New Mexico Scientific Laboratories building, on one end of the building, have you guys already ate lunch?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, all right. So on one end of the building, New Mexico Scientific Laboratories, they do the autopsies on the humans. Everybody that dies ends up on that end of the building. But on the other end of the building, animals that die mysteriously or unexpectedly, or they know is disease, they go to the other end of that building, they do what they call a necropsy. And that after the necropsy's done, they've got all these carcasses. Well, on the people side, the family comes and picks up the remains of the people. And on this end, the farmers and ranchers, they don't want those animals back. So they gotta get rid of them. And so forever, they had a contract with Pajarito Landfill that after New Mexico Scientific Laboratories was done with them, they would take them out to the dump, they'd dig a hole, they'd dump them, get rid of the carcasses. They dump giraffes, every animal from the zoo that dies goes to that building. And they do a necropsy on it, find out what it passed away from. And so we got a project to put a new digester in there. And what this machine is, it's a huge pressure cooker. It's almost 8 feet across. It's about 16 feet high. It's got a lid, a hydraulic lid that comes up, and you dump all those carcasses into that pressure cooker. And you put some sodium, what is that chemical that dissolves everything?
Hydrochloric acid? I don't know.
It's something like that. They put that in there, water and steam, and they cook that stuff for about 2 hours at 306 degrees. It's got a turner inside that pressure cooker that starts breaking that stuff up. And as the bones and horns, it dissolves everything. There's absolutely nothing left. And as it breaks those bones, that sodium hydroxide, it gets into the bone marrow and it softens everything from the inside out. And, we got to the point, almost like we are now, we're starting to commission, like this building here, we started commissioning the digester. And so we had a farmer bought another herd, and you learn a lot of things working in these places. Whenever you buy another farmer's herd, you get to pick out 3 of the sickliest cows there and take them down there, and they'll do a necropsy for free to make sure that you're buying a good herd. And so we had 3 huge milk cows, Jersey milk cows. And we loaded them into that digester, and we turned the digester on for the first run, and everything went good. I mean, there's absolutely no DNA left. It turns it into like
Ice cream.
Scrapple.
yeah, it's
Goulash.
the first run, it came out like pancake batter. And unfortunately, we're in the basement, and there was a lift station just like yours that pushes that stuff out, and that lift station didn't keep up with what we dumped into it. And we dumped about 6 inches of water in that. I shouldn't call it water. It was digested animal carcass. Over room about this big right here, about
Oh
6
my
inches.
gosh.
And we had to clean every bit of that
Does
stuff.
it smell to high heaven?
Oh my
Oh my
gosh. So, great question. Me and Louise, middle boy, we went, because when they told us we had the job, I figured out who's building our digester. And I called them to see who has a digester in our area that's actually installed and functioning. Well, they had one in Colorado Springs because they have a veterinarian college up there. So we went up to look at that. I figured I'm gonna go look at how it works, what it does, before we ever get ours, so I'll be a little bit ahead. And so we went up there to Colorado Springs, and Jesse stayed in the hotel because he couldn't get into the college there. I had to go look at that. And as soon as I pulled up in the parking lot, I got out and I smelled something I'd never smelled before in the parking lot. Parking lot's about twice the distance from here to that wall. And I was like, man, that's quite something. And we get over there and we go inside, and this guy that works there just as helpful as could be. But that smell is just horrendous. And he was telling me that for the college kids that go in, when they start doing their stuff in the labs, they take Vicks and they put it in their nose to eliminate that smell. And so we went through there, and I got to watch theirs digest some carcasses and smell that smell. And when I got out to the truck, that smell was all over me.
Yeah.
So I dropped down in my skivvies and hopped in the truck and went back to the hotel and showered. But and after that trip, it created another portion of the project we had, because the old digester was just gonna vent off into the atmosphere. And there's residential neighborhoods, there's a kindergarten school across the street, and we would have evacuated that whole area. So we ended up using HEPA filters, which HEPA filters, that's what they use to take the radioactive air out of our building, is HEPA filters. They take everything out of that airstream, 99.49s, 99.9999 comes out of the airstream. And so it's safe in our building, it's safe to discharge that air in the atmosphere, but we had to do that at the digester in order to be able to vent that off and not evacuate that neighborhood. So they were very thankful that we took a trip up there to see how bad that was. But our digester come out great. It's still operating today. It's quite a project. I really enjoyed doing that. Was, I think, one of the dirtiest jobs I've ever done in my life. But it was a lot of fun. I had some great guys, and the engineer that was helping us, because he didn't want to be on the news either, so he spent a lot of time with us to make sure everything we did was good. It was correct.
Tell them that it was on the news prior, because they spent millions of dollars
Oh, yeah.
purchasing this machine that never functioned ever
Oh,
once.
Who
So
is it?
Dave actually got it functioning, and to this day it's still working.
What was that?
Good job.
Larry
Channel
Barker.
7 news guy.
Larry Barker.
Larry Barker.
Oh, goodness.
And
He
when
went in
we,
there and said, "You have
Investigates.
dollars."
yeah,
Doesn't he do
and
the
when
Larry
we
Barker
demoed the old one
investigates?
out, when we took the old one out, they set up their news crews. The state allowed them to set up their news crews
And you were on the news again.
and video us taking the old one out. And of course, we told them ours would never be like, yeah, you'll be able to use ours for, I think it had a shelf life of 25 years. But yeah, they were there filming that when they took it out, and it was on the 6 o'clock news, $2.5 million, taxpayers' money.
But you were positively on the news.
Yes, yeah, for the good part. We're there on the good part of the news.
Okay.
So the question's more for you. Cause I come back from deployments and of course we got dead squid, whatnot, and coke, or just rancid oil from wheat that came out of the packaging and whatnot. We wrapped that all up in one bag. And at first we thought we'd wash, and now my wife put an end to that. So, we would just like hand it over to the facilities engineer, whatever base we were at, and they'd incinerate it. I can only imagine, do you have an outdoor man cave or a cot in the garage where he sleeps until you can like rub him down in lye and other stuff? I mean,
Everything possible. No, but when he did do the
She goes
spill-
home to Albuquerque. She doesn't hang around.
When the spill happened, we had to throw away his boots, everything, head to toe. It didn't even come close to the garage. I could smell him
Yeah.
before I even opened the
Yeah,
garage.
so call it, it's gonna be a late night, baby, we gotta
Yeah.
get rid of all
He
this.
came home and
6
he
inches
just
of-
purged literally everything in the dump, in the trash can.
Trash can.
Boots, everything.
okay.
And then he still, oh,
So I'll
I
ask,
felt so bad.
so growing up, Poconos, whatnot, grandparents in Poconos, if you got sprayed by a skunk, and that just sucked, tomato juice,
Yeah.
some tomato sauce, rubbed it down, yeah, it's not bad, you rinse off the hair, it's pain. Is there something that worked, because on board ship, you lose in heavy sea suction, and then you end up with brown water in the bilges. My roommate was the DCA, damage control assistant, so, yeah, they would go to the fantail and chuck stuff and get sprayed down
Yeah.
and whatnot for sanitary reasons, because they're knee-high in sewage, right?
Yep.
What gets rid of the smell, what sanitizes that stuff?
We didn't do anything special. I don't remember doing anything like chemically special to him.
No,
Once he got rid of the clothes, it wasn't as bad, but he stayed in the shower for
spent a lot of time
like
in
an
that
hour.
shower. Yeah.
And just washing down, but I don't remember doing anything.
There's also tomato juice, you know,
Well,
it
yeah,
helps with
I'm
skunks.
thinking
Yeah.
iodine solutions, different.
It's the vinegar in that tomato juice that helps with that,
Okay.
neutralize that
Okay.
smell of those skunks.
Okay.
So, here you were working up here at the National Lab. Have you worked at Sandia or any of the other national
Yes,
labs?
Oh my God.
I've probably put in 15 years at Sandia.
Okay,
The majority of my time is in the semiconductor buildings.
okay.
That's what JB Henderson does the best.
Global
And-
Foundry.
Global Foundry, we went up to New York for a year to work on Global Foundries, which was a chip plant up there, and spent a couple years in Arizona at an Intel chip plant up there. But yeah, that's what JB Henderson does best, is chip plants.
So they bring you to Albuquerque because of the Intel facility?
I was born and raised here,
Oh, okay.
but I think the first time I worked there was 91, 92 is the first time I went to a chip plant. And I've been there lots of years. I enjoy it. It's, safety's really, really tough at a chip plant because there's more chemicals in a chip plant than there is at a chemical manufacturing plant. It's incredible the amount of chemicals they use on those. And how that technology works, how that chemical on that little wafer disc does what it's supposed to do, I could not tell you. I don't even want to try. That's well above my pay grade, but yeah, I've spent a lot of time there. A lot of time at Sandia working on kind of stuff like this. Nothing, Sandia doesn't do a lot of radiation stuff. And they do a lot of experimental stuff. And I've worked in a lot of those neat buildings too. The Z machine.
Yeah.
This is where they focus all that electricity into one spot and they simulate 1/16 of a nuclear blast, all in one shot. It shakes the earth when that machine goes off. And unfortunately, it destroys itself every now and then. Because they take they got these capacitors that are huge, about 4 or 5 of those tables together, and they put them in this pit, and they run electricity into all of them. And they fill it with oil and stuff to keep it cool. And when they charge those capacitors, they're the #1 user of electricity in the state of New Mexico. That's how much electricity they're dumping into those capacitors. and they get them full, and off of those capacitors are these aluminum ducts that run down, and they all end up in one spot. And they use vacuum pumps as big as this quarter of the room here, and they suck a vacuum off the top of those capacitors. And then they use a laser that laser would burn a hole through Mount Taylor. That's how powerful it is. And they use this laser to go around and open the trigger on every one of those capacitors within a billionth of a second. So all that electricity is released at one time.
Wow.
And the vacuum pumps actually suck that electricity down to one point where their target is. And there's people from all over the world pay to have their target blown up. They do, and there's been a few times when the dark window, black SUVs come in, we all gotta leave. They do their stuff, and then they blow it up, they pick up what's left, they leave, and we go back in and repair the machine again. So, yeah, there's a lot of neat stuff. They actually say that when that machine fires, they can see it on the Richter scale up here in Los Alamos, when that machine fires. Yeah, I've got to do a lot of neat stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've like I said, been blessed.
What's the funniest thing that has ever happened to you?
Funniest thing?
You think it's
Sharing
funny?
the DNA?
I can tell you one of the most enjoyable things that happened to me. I was working with a guy named Larry Burrell. Bless his heart, he's probably not here no more because he was an older guy. When I was working with him, we were building the new prisons in Santa Fe. And I was an apprentice working over there. And Larry was a very difficult guy to work with. Very difficult guy. And we had to do our tie-in, our sewer tie-in for the medium security. And so we had to tie in, and the state owned the property, so they weren't gonna make us tie into a manhole. We tied in between two manholes. So we dug it up, found the line, we're gonna cut it in, tie ours in, everything's good. Well, we had to stop the flow of sewer from one manhole to the other. And so we get this test ball, and it's an 8-inch sewer line. And we get this test ball, and Larry ties a chain to this test ball, and we had an air hose that took us up to the top of the deal. So I go down in there, I slid that test ball down in there, he starts pumping it up, make sure it's square, climb back out. So we go down there, we do our business, we get our teeth cut in, everything's good. And while we were there, the sewer from the prison continued to flow, because they could never stop that. And so it continued to flow, and it was just flowing over that manhole. Manhole's about 12 foot deep. And I mean, it's just flowing over, and so we go back up there to pull that test ball out of there. And we take we knew we weren't gonna get back down in there. We let the air out from the air hose.
Right.
And when Larry pulled on it, the test ball wedged in there. And so Larry pulls again, and he breaks that wire that's holding the test ball to the chain.
Oh.
And he tells me, go down in there and get that test ball. And I was just an apprentice, but I had to stand my ground. I was like, you tied the wire to it, you go down there.
Yeah, you tied the wire and you pulled.
So he said a few words, called me a few names, and so he took his shirt off, he tucked his pants in his boots, and put some gloves on, and he walked down that ladder. And when he got to the bottom, the test ball had turned, so it was flowing somehow, but we had to get the test ball out of there. So he gets down, and as soon as he puts his foot down on the bottom of that manhole, there was a clump of poop, I'm gonna call it. He bent down to pick that up, and that poop got him right there.
Oh. Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God! So the guards come out in a prison truck, made him ride in the back of the prison truck, took him inside so he could shower. But yeah, that was a very. But yeah, we done. I could tell.
Stood your ground.
Oh, I was so fortunate I stood my ground.
You'll appreciate this. If you look Coast Guard cutters, you see the white ones doing drug stuff. You'll see a couple of red ones, they break ice, they go down McMurdo Bay. You'll see black ones on the Great Lakes, on the rivers, major ports. The black ones go out and service aids to navigation, buoys, day boards, etc. They come over lat and long within inches, right? Because in these channels, you get a tanker, an LNG, something like, you see how important it is, right? Well, the buoy tenders we had for the longest time were from World War II. This Coast Guard just don't have money. And the OCS classes, we have a 2-week period to send you to a ship. So they broke us up and they sent all the frat boys and sorority girls right in OCS to one, and they actually had to work, climb up in the buoys, scrape all that sea stuff and
Scum.
grunt all that out, and other ones were doing that, but ours, fucking, pardon my language, Fleet Week, New York City, it was great. But because we had all the extra officer candidates on board, they had to go ahead and flush the sewer line on the ship, right? And there were a lot of ships tied up, so so what you do is you go in, you T-valve all of the drains on the showers, on the commodes, everything. And then they pass high pressure air through and it blows the line through and gets it up and off pier side to, those surfaces.
Greg, don't the regs say you have to be 15 nautical miles off the coast?
No, you're pumping it through a line to a sewer line.
Oh, okay.
Back
So, bottom line is, kid just out of boot camp, he showed up from New Jersey, he was a fireman, so he worked on the engineering side, right? And they walked around, checks, yeah. Boom, line goes through, and all of a sudden, from just back in O country, you hear, ah! And you see a kid beeline from officer country across the mess deck out onto the buoy deck, and there are footprints. All that pressure, all that crap on the buoy tender, when that air went through, was supposed to force it all off the ship onto shore, tying it into the line. It just hit him. And the whole inside of that head, right, that bathroom for that stateroom and all. And I just remember the smell of that and everyone laughing and Doc coming out, they hosed him down. And then they had to put the stuff all over him in his ears and his nostrils and stuff, and oh my God, and that's where I learned, if you ever get asked to help the engineers, you make sure that key valve is secured that line.
He shares DNA with other people just like I
Oh
do.
my God, but they're all coasties.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I can tell stories all day long. I spent 4 months in the bottom of Abiquiu Dam.
no,
That's, that dam was built 100 years ago. And they had designed it with the waterway that they could put a generating station on the other end of it. That's where Los Alamos County typically gets all their electricity from, free electricity. And it was pretty unique. They had, when they originally built the dam, they had the 2 gates in it. They're 6 foot wide, 12 foot tall, had 2 gates. And they would open those gates depending on how much water they had to release from the lake. And I'd always thought that if you got 1 million gallons here, you put 1 million gallons in that pipe, it was pretty much a neutral pass-through. But the head pressure from 160 some feet of water in that lake, that water goes underneath that gate and it creates a vacuum on the other side of that gate that has a 36-inch pipe that runs from there all the way 100 and, actually it's almost 200 feet and out the side of the building. And in the summertime, if you walk by there with your hat on, it actually sucks your hat off and pushes up against the grill where they're relieving that vacuum.
okay.
And it worked. The engineer did their part, but when they decided to put the generating station on the other side of the dam, that vacuum was created on the other side because they filled that 12-foot tunnel full of water, and then they controlled the water on the other side. Well, the vent pipe wasn't as thick as they originally thought it was. And they were down there one day and a hole in that vent pipe, because it's got water in it now up to 167 foot, is where they used to keep the water. And a hole as big as someone's thumb popped out of that vent pipe. And it started unloading that lake into that, they call it a bell tower in the bottom of those. It's got an elevator, it goes down, the elevator takes you 7 minutes. The crane to take equipment down there takes you like 48 minutes to get down there. And so we spent almost 4 months, they had to shut all the water off. they couldn't release any more water through that dam because it was going through that vent pipe filling up the bell hole. And some engineer somewhere allowed them to put a 480 volt transformer in the bottom of that bell tower. And so they killed everything, and we went in there and we cut pipe out and we put pipe in, and that was the dirtier, the nastier, the harder, those are the ones I always volunteer for.
Oh,
You know,
that's great.
after you've roughed in a few buildings and stuff like that, everything else is the same, but I always volunteered for that stuff. And I did volunteer for that one up there, because how many people get to work in the bell tower? You're at the very bottom of that
Right.
lake. And it's,
Scary.
you ride the elevator down there and
I know, it's 7 minutes down.
yeah.
I'm worried.
And now what they told us, if something ever happens and it starts to fill up, they said, just float.
Yeah.
Just float, it'll take you right up to 167 feet, you can grab the ladder and climb out. But luckily, I never had to test that theory to see if I was gonna float out of that one,
So wait, you grew up in New Mexico. Had you grown up in West Virginia, you would have been a coal miner, wouldn't you?
but probably.
Yeah. Holy
I
crap.
got into plumbing because I was working at Blaney's Radiator Service for $4.60 an hour, and the plumber's union was paying $5.30 an hour, so I jumped ship. That's why I went there, because I had a terrible habit of fast cars. And there's an old saying that speed costs money, how fast you wanna go.
Okay.
That's why I jumped ship, maybe a couple extra dollars a week. But that's about it. I gotta go. Thanks for having me. And thank you for everything that you guys do. Rotary's a great thing. I do a lot of, community projects with Louise in Albuquerque, and
Yeah.
it goes real well. I enjoy doing that kind of stuff. And luckily, I've got some of the knowledge.
Well, you're welcome here anytime.
So all we need to do is talk to Paul or whoever that guy is and sabotage your program, and Luis is here for another year.
He was hugging me this morning, because we're so close to being done.
Okay.